What do you do when your licensed Floyd Rose doesn't hold tuning anymore? You replace it with a Gotoh. Some modification required. This is a Gotoh Freeway Floyd. I guess that will become a Gotoh Freeway Gotoh, which is fine with me. Going for chrome from the original black. No big deal. I replaced the locking nut with some chrome bolts already. I think that's going to look fine. And the issue with this one, this trem was really never as expressive as the better variants, like the original Floyd Rose or the Floyd Rose 1000, etc. Even some of Ibanez's bridges. So the knife plates, edges. Let's see if we can focus on that. Well, they're worn out, and that flat surface is no longer a point and is slipping on the studs. The system is just no longer stable when you go from a dive bomb to a pull-up. It reveals the instability. So what I'm going to do is a couple modifications required, like I'm saying. This Gotoh trem comes with a 40mm block. Okay, the stock one I measured to be about 34 mils. I don't want to change that, so what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to hacksaw and sand and file the new block to the same spec here, same length, same depth, so that it seats well in the trem cavity. And it's going to have more mass being brass still, so that's still an improvement. The other thing is the studs and the inserts. So these are actually M6 bolts. M6 thread here. And the Gotoh comes with M8. Should be in that box. And the standard for like a typical Floyd Rose, like original or 1000, is a 7mm. I will no longer be using those bolts. They have yielded where I needed them. What I'm going to do is, so those are 6mm female threads there on the inserts, and it's kind of a pain if you go to remove them and press new ones in without having a drill press necessarily or something like that. What I'm going to do is tap these threads to 7mm, because they're 10mm outside diameter, actually same outside diameter as a typical Floyd Rose one, so I'll still have the wall strength. Tap those to 7 and die the new studs that come in here. They're 8. I'm going to die them down to 7mm, so I'll have met in the middle, going from 6 to 7 and 8 to 7. And that should work. It'll still set back the trem that little bit, which might mean that I have to hacksaw to shorten the bolts that set the saddles, like hold your strings in place. So that's the modifications that may be required, is those bolts, but definitely I can't go from 8mm into 6mm. So I'm gonna do that. I've already got the neck straight. This thing is going to be leveled from sandpaper and crowned. I have those behind me. And I got some files to do the dressing and put the new strings on, and we're gonna be in shippity shape here. Last thing I will do, which I've never done before, is adjust the pickup height, or at least see if it can be improved. More to come. Installing 11.3mm Gotoh inserts in a guitar which had 10mm inserts, much shallower as well. That's what's going on there. Trying to fit this unit, and I already modified it. I'm not done. This was a 40mm block. I cut it down to 34, which was 1 5/16", basically, to match my stock one, which is this. So, get them in the frame if I can. Yeah. I had to recut those lines and drill the spring holes a little bit further. They actually go in on a bit of an angle, which is kind of good to know for next time if you're looking at the spring. Bit of a downward angle, and it should be more upright. The other thing that I will have to do, oh, there's two things. This sticks out about 1 centimeter more for the bar, to receive the bar, than the old one did. And I could swap this over and not deal with this modification. It's either that I would cut this off and try and rethread it and stuff, but the internal thread actually stops around there, so unless this came off and I could push that up and rethread the top down, that's not going to work. And so on the guitar, where I have taped right here, that's the ledge where that was the clearance for the bar sleeve stock license Floyd Rose on this Gotoh Freeway Floyd, which is about to become a Gotoh Freeway Gotoh, but it's gonna, like, I'm gonna have to pretty much route it. I'm just gonna use a drill bit if I have to, and I'll sand and paint it just to close up the wood from environmental factors after. Just used a 7/16 bit. It's 11.1 mils. These say they're 11.3 on the caliper. You got to do it plumb both ways, aligned both directions, horizontally and vertically. And that's pretty much press fit now, having drilled it out with that. Going to tap them in now. The camera might shake. Check level the other way. That's actually not bad. It's gonna get louder. Some very good news. I seated these where I wanted them, which is, I measured 8 millimeters before as my stock height. Yeah, I got a piece of tape or whatever. I had 8 mils. You have to trust me on this. From the wood to the top of the stud. And I think I'm bang on with these. Too bad you can't see that very well. Anyways, I verified that. It's awesome. So I did actually install this correctly. Hopefully it didn't hit my pickup too hard or anything like that. LOL. It's actually pretty sweet modifying guitar after having it stock for so long. So that's ready for the Gotoh. However, I either put my stock arm and sleeve back in, or I've got to notch this out another centimeter down. for that to set in, and then also, like I said before, I've got to cut the bolts back on the thread a little bit and retap the thread so that they don't hit here. We are in good shape. It's late at night. I gotta eat. Rock on. Okay, so a few other modifications were required to fit the Gotoh into the Godin. This was the stock licensed Floyd rose. You can see the sleeve for the arm is very short compared to the block there. And it used to just rest on the shelf. And I had to drill that out a bit. So here's how the stock one went in. Of course, didn't go on the Gotoh studs, but that doesn't matter right now. So maximum dive position, something like that, and maximum pull up right there. So if that's the neutral position, I like to say that that's about half sunk. Can't see it about halfway. Okay. But the routing was required to even have the Gotoh sit in the cavity here. Let's look how much longer that sleeve is. Thought about modifying that, but when I looked at the threads, they didn't go far enough up for me to cut the sleeve and the bar and retap and die those. So with the Gotoh in, neutral position. Sorry. Maximum dive. And maximum pull up. So again, if that's the neutral position, flush with the body, it's about half sunk. So happy with that. It's not the prettiest, but I'll get some paint in there, and you know what? You can't see this when the tremolo's on, so a little bit of carnage from using the drill. You know, it was bound to happen at some point. No big deal. It's my guitar. Wouldn't want to do this to a customer or something like that, but it's the first time. A lot of modification required. And that's not it. I have removed the screws which hold the strings in the saddle there, because they stick out a little bit where that's not going to work. And I saw, like, I don't want to cut the cavity further, right? The elegant thing here is just to cut the screws. So I'm going to grind them off. Let's see. Grind them off to that smooth point at the end. I get that in focus. Maybe not. And then I will basically move that part back for the same length. So, or another way of saying that is I'm going to shorten the screws by about the height of the head. And I will rethread. And that's the other modification required. I'm going to do with the grinder and a tap and die set. You can use a hacksaw too, we'll actually see. And the final thing which will be required is, when I was doing this, putting the inserts in and drilling this out, I came across the path of the ground wire for the trem claw for the whole electronics unit, and so that was right there on that hole, the old hole. And I drilled a new one, perfectly aligned it straight to come out the existing on the inside. And so I just need to resolder that back to the claw. Yeah, also did a leveling crown on this guitar recently. Got some of these handheld Hosco crowning files. This is for medium frets. Got another one for jumbos, like my Charvel. Leveling beam, straightness tool, straight edge there, and that worked out pretty well, so don't be afraid to tackle these things. Okay, I've got 2 screws at a time that I can hold in my soft grips on my vise. And here is the block that holds the string in on the saddle. So this little divot the end of the screw goes in there. So if I cut them, I'm gonna have to make this part again. And it seems to me 3mm top is the same diameter. I've checked. And knowing that, then I will be using a 3mm die on the ends of these after I've cut them. While I found out that brass does not spark, I will not be so lucky with these hardened steel grinder. Face shield, gloves, jackets. This may destroy my phone, so. Okay, well, let's risk it for the biscuit here. The last two. Let's get it done. Okay, got the M4 tap. This is the thread you see there. Okay, should be able to get on those again. I'm actually gonna put the M3 tap on them now to make the part that'll fit in the little block to hold the string. So I found a great way to put the 3mm end on the screws. Got a T15 Torx bit on a drill. Doesn't have to be an impact. Get more precision with a regular drill, but so starting them can be difficult, but it's actually not this way. Here's my last one to do, start to finish, and I'll compare to the ones I know works. So I've tried those. Check your progress. Wipe off the burrs. A little bit more. And back it out to smooth off the finish, because I don't actually need the threads. It's wearing off the metal. Still gonna do just a touch more. Yeah. Looks good. How picky am I? Oh, that's good. So I've got 6 of these done, and now they will work on the Gotoh with my Gotoh Freeway Floyd, Gotoh Freeway Gotoh, and allow the trem to both dive and pull up. Proof is in the pudding, right? So I'll show you. I put in all the blocks in the saddles, and I've just slightly threaded in all the screws One thing to note is that if you raise the fine screw, like loosen it all the way, that allows the right angle for these screws to go into the saddle. And they're all lifted up, which is what the fine tuner does when you tune it sharper, the saddle goes down. So usually I like to have them about halfway on their travel. That way when you've tuned your guitar and you've locked the nut, you have room to go in either direction for fine tuning. Okay, so the strings aren't in there, but you know, if they were, tighten them a little bit. Nice thing is all the components on this Gotoh trem, 1996 model, are hardened steel. So I had failures on this licensed Floyd Rose, this soft metal. See that I had to retap the thread and go up to a bigger size. It's just soft metal, which is why the knife edges failed too, and the stud's the same thing. So it just wouldn't stay in tune if I pulled up. It would stay sharp. I could dive bomb and go and let go, and that would be great dive bomb all day. But pulling up, pulled all the strings sharp, and it was just annoying. Okay, so they fit in enough that when I turn it over, I have in fact gone in the divots. So I went from that 4 to 3 millimeter thread, and that seemed to be the answer. So, one step closer to enjoying this guitar. Okay, well, I just soldered this on. I'm no expert at this, but the connection is solid. I'm just gonna screw this back on. I've covered the guitar fairly well, and I'm just going to be painting the area affected by the drill. Quick shot of black spray paint in this area. The painting is all done. For a small job like this, I often find just spray paint into the lid and use a small brush to get all the areas you need. All that you see there is sawdust as well, so just a little bit dirty, but good to go. And I also went ahead and dealt with this original hole for the ground wire. Got a sandwich there of wood glue on the bottom from previous day. Dropped in some sawdust, finished it off with super glue and black paint on the top, so it's plugged. The plan for this guitar now, I just need to polish my frets, let this dry, and then install the trem, and springs, get the cover on, strings, tune up, good to go. Just a quick note, I finished my level and crown and strung this guitar up, and everything's good, except I found the action to be at 2.75 mils each side, which is too high. It used to be in 2 1/4, and I set the top of the stud 8 mils off the wood here, same as I had with the licensed Floyd Rose, and it came out 1/2 mil higher. So I've just sunk these flush. I pulled them out safely with a pry bar. Don't mar your guitar. And I just drilled a little deeper. I've got them sitting flush now, and that'll be the maximum depth, so I'd be theoretically taking my action to 1.75 mils, just slammed. It's nice. And you can actually raise that, so you can go back up just by loosening these. I should have thought about that before, just in case. The other thing I noticed when I had it strung up was because the Gotoh radius is 14 inches and the fretboard is 12, the middle two strings at least about a 1/4 mil lower on the action, so I could think about shimming them, or I might not care about it, possibly adjust it with the bobbins for output if I don't mind how it plays. Final update for the low action modification. I had to take a bunch of wood off the cavity and out of the space for the arm sleeve because the knife plate was riding up the divot of the stud, which would cause improper wear and not be correct. So I used sandpaper and files to get this down. And the locking studs, you first screw them in to the height you want. I measured 7 mils off of the insert, so it's a millimeter lower than before. And then you use the 1.5 millimeter Allen key that comes in the kit, and you tighten the inner bolt, which goes through the bottom and pushes against the insert. Because if you didn't have these and you had the stud in any other position than all the way down, it would be loose. So this is the friction force that fixes that. And we'll just show the travel with the Gotoh trim in here. So if that's the neutral position, that's a full dive. And pull up. See, that's pivoting properly now. And I'll just paint this and be good to go. Here is the long-awaited final product, the Godin Freeway Gotoh. Got the strings on, all the fretwork's done. I kept the original nut, there was no problem with that. I did adjust the intonation a little bit. Stock positioning was pretty close. The low E was a bit sharp, so I pulled it back. And the B and high E string were a bit flat, so I nudged them forward just a little bit. You loosen the string almost completely and make that adjustment, which is almost a bit of a guess. Then you tune up to pitch again and see where you're at. It's not too bad to do. Intonation's good now. I also just put a little piece of foam in the trem cavity, and that tape there is when you cut the brass block down. The holes for the springs are actually angled backwards a little bit. So if you don't know that and you drill straight down and then you try and correct, there's a bit of play. So that tape there was taking up slack, and then I just hit them in with a brass hammer. They're not going anywhere. It's a learning experience. And adjust your trem claw each side so that it's basically flush. You got to do iterative tuning as you correct for the position of the bridge, and you tune each time for those adjustments. It's a bit of an iterative process, but no problem. Another thing, the action on this guitar is 2 1/4 mils, which was the stock action before I even did this job. I mistakenly thought that lowering the bridge height by a millimeter was going to lower the action the same amount, and I should have known better from my work on acoustics, where you sand the saddle down, that the 12th fret, where you measure the action, is half the length of the string. So you only drop half of what you do at the bridge. So if I wanted the 1 3/4 mils action I thought I was going to get, the same as on my Charvel then, I would have to pry up the studs again, the inserts, and drill a millimeter deeper and sand down a little bit more for that play, the dive and pull up. Not necessary here. I mean, do it later if I wanted, but I'm happy with how it plays. Another thing when I measured the action, so I need to know, I've got 2 of these gauges. One's a fret rocker from Amazon. What's the other side here? This one is accurate for metric when I checked with my caliper. whereas the Baroque gauge actually reads a millimeter lower. So for example, if I'm actually at 2¼ Baroque's telling me 2 millimeters. So you either just make that adjustment or you don't use it. Yeah, so I'll do a demonstration. Some whammy fun coming up.